You are witnessing the most powerful man on the planet lead your wife away. You are immobile. You are unable to speak. All around you, with their wine cups shaking in their hands, 50 other senators sit motionless. Some people are hoping she will come back. You're hoping she won't say anything that could kill you both. 20 minutes seem like 20 years. He does more than simply bring her back to your side when he does. He takes a seat. He pours wine for himself. Then, in front of everyone you know, he starts going into detailed, clinical detail about what had just transpired in that room. Your coworkers are gazing at their dishes. Your spouse is gazing at nothing. You also need to grin. You must provide a nod. The alternative is to watch your children perish, so you must thank him. This was not insanity. It was a machine. A surgically precise mechanism that destroys the human soul. The man who constructed it gained all of his knowledge from witnessing the previous emperor kill his whole family. Caligula was his name. And 2,000 years later, we're still trying to figure out how one human being could create such a level of psychological warfare because of how unsettling and systematically terrible what he did to Rome was. Think about liking and subscribing to this video if you think it's important to recall the documented accounts of the most horrible people in history. More stories from the deepest recesses of the human story are revealed thanks to your support. Let's return to the man who made cruelty an artistic medium. You're going to hear something lot worse, so stay with me. Furthermore, what he did wasn't the most horrifying aspect. The reason for this is that the system he created outlived him. You must comprehend something important before I show you the 5 acts of Caligula's fear machine. He wasn't bad from birth. He was produced. And when he was 7 years old, the procedure began. Imagine this. 14A is the year. A young boy, perhaps 6 or 7 years old, is sprinting through a Roman military camp. He is dressed as a little version of a legionnaire, replete with tiny red boots and armor. The troops are laughing, lifting him up, and throwing him into the air. They are battle-hardened men who have conquered half of the planet. They refer to him as Little Boots or Caligula. Germanicus, Rome's finest general since Julius Caesar, is his father. The warriors adore this child and revere his father. He serves as both their lucky charm and mascot. Little Caligula follows him wherever he goes. Additionally, the men sincerely think that this child will help them win. Growing up, this youngster believes he is unbeatable, loved, and shielded by the strongest army on the planet. He doesn't know what's going to happen. His father passes away a year later. The official explanation is an unexpected illness. The story that was whispered, poisoning, issued by a person close to the emperor. The emperor himself, perhaps. Accused of betraying the emperor, his mother was dragged from their house. Before attempting to consume the stuffing from his mattress, his eldest brother was captured, imprisoned, and starved. His second brother was banished to an island where he was subjected to torture by guards until he ended it by smashing his own head against the walls. Young Caligula watches as they are eliminated one by one. He will be the last by the time he is 19. The only member of his family to survive. The summonses follow. Tiberius, the emperor, desires to see him. The stunning island of Capri is located off the coast of Italy. It is now Tiberius' personal stronghold. The Senate, Rome, and everyone who would disagree with his actions there are all far away. Capri is described as a home of horrors by the ancient historians, such as Suetonius and Tacitus, who wrote about these occurrences while they were still alive. Tiberius has turned into a crazy, evil man who surrounds himself with yes-men and astrologers and creates new atrocities out of boredom. And an adolescent Caligula enters this setting. He is aware that Tiberius killed his family. He can't demonstrate it, but everyone knows it. Not even a hint of it. He's dead after one misguided glance, one grieving moment, and one angry outburst. He therefore does more than just survive. He succeeds. Suetonius penned a terrifying piece. Neither a better servant nor a worse master ever existed. Caligula discovers how to hide his humanity. He observes. He is a student. He turns into everything Tiberius desires. Compliant, amusing, and safe. He performs this position flawlessly for 6 years. Tiberius then passes away in 37 AD. Natural causes, according to some. Some claim that Caligula used a pillow to suffocate him. In any case, the 19-year-old hostage is currently the most powerful individual on the planet. Rome rejoices. They believe they are receiving the adored Germanicus' son. They don't know. A guy who spent 6 years learning how to free humans from the greatest monster in Roman history has just been crowned. And for 7 months, everything appears to be ideal. Then he becomes ill. Additionally, the individual who goes to sleep is not the same person who wakes up. What took place throughout those days of fever? We'll never find out. However, something inside Caligula had broken by the time he recovered. Rome was going to find out what he had been concealing. I'm not going to talk about random violence. It's not insane behavior. Caligula created a framework. 5 different psychological warfare acts. They are all intended to destroy distinct aspects of the human spirit. The meticulous nature of it is what's so frightening. Allow me to present the blueprint to you. Act as the sister goddess, one of the machines. One of Caligula's 3 sisters, Drusilla, was unique. According to ancient accounts, their love went beyond what even Rome found unsettling. What important is that everyone believed the incest rumors, regardless of whether they were propaganda or true. Furthermore, Caligula not only tolerated but actively promoted the rumors. Then Drusilla passed away. The heart of Caligula's system is shown by what transpired next. He forced an entire empire to endure his personal suffering. He turns grief into a weapon. He starts by having Drusilla declared a deity by the Senate. Officially, not symbolically. Romans are now obliged to worship at temples dedicated to his deceased sister. He then proclaims a time of mourning. This is the point at when it turns monstrous. Laughing is now a capital offense. Taking a bath is now a capital offense. Having dinner with your family is now a criminal offense. Go back and read that. Lasting several weeks or even months. You could be put to death if you are discovered grinning. Just picture yourself living that way. During breakfast, your child delivers a joke. Are you laughing? Do you punish them for being young? Every happy moment turns into a possible death sentence. Whether Rome wants it or not, he is forcing them to experience his suffering. He's discovering that he can make his inner world everyone's reality, criminalize happiness, and govern emotion. And as he discovers that he can manipulate people's emotions, he begins experimenting with what else he can extract from them. The imperial brothel is the second part of the machine. The next section is so unsettling that historians are still debating whether it was later propaganda or something that really happened. However, the ancient sources assert the following. Caligula opens a brothel inside the imperial palace as a business, not for himself but for the general public. Additionally, regular prostitutes are not employed there. The sons and daughters of Rome's noble families, the senators, the aristocracy, and those in charge of legions and provinces work there. He sends heralds into the streets to proclaim the prices, which include special rates for virgins from senatorial families and varying charges for married and single women. And this is the particular aspect that makes it so awful. According to reports, he maintained ledgers, comprehensive records, names, dates, transactions, and the bureaucratic accounting of human degradation. Consider the psychological effects of this. A Roman nobleman's entire identity is based on family honor. Your ancestry dates back many centuries. There is significance to your name. Your daughter is currently being promoted like livestock on the streets. Additionally, her name appears in a ledger. Additionally, since execution is your only option, there is nothing you can do about it. He is not merely stealing their corpses. He is stealing the one item that the Roman elite cherished beyond life itself: their name, their legacy, and their reputation. However, he is still not finished because he comes to a realization. Public humiliation has great power. However, there is something even more terrible. Humiliated in private with witnesses in public. The banquet of predation is the third act of the machine. Now that you know the background, visualize this scene once more. It's an imperial feast. You and your spouse are seated. There are about 100 other senators and their spouses around the age of 50. Everyone is sipping wine that tastes like terror. Caligula is upright. Everyone stops talking. He looks at the women as he moves carefully between the tables. His eyes are analytical and clinical. He's making a decision. He comes to a stop at your table. He glances at your spouse. He examines her in the same manner as you would examine a horse you are considering purchasing, examining her physical structure, hair, and teeth. He doesn't even acknowledge your existence, let alone ask for permission. He simply grabs her hand and walks her off. You take a seat. The man seated beside you is gazing into his wine. Everyone is acting as though nothing is going on, since they can all tell if you object, stand up, or display any emotion at all. She, your kids, and you will all perish in this room. Thus you wait, drink, and sit. 20 minutes and 30. The discourse around you is brittle and forced. A joke is made, and it disappears into thin air. At last, he returns her. She takes a seat. She refuses to look at you. He then takes a seat as well. That he stays put. He remains. And in front of everyone, including your friends, co-workers, and competitors, he starts going into great detail about what just transpired. Clinical illustration. He is making jokes, evaluating her performance, and comparing her to the wives of other senators. You must also grin. His quips must make you laugh. You must nod as though everything is just fine and usual. He's not merely abusing your spouse. You are being destroyed by him. Everything that defines a man in Roman society, including your authority, dignity, and capacity to defend your family. He's doing it in front of all the important people. You also need to return tomorrow. These are the same people you have to smile at. Everyone knows exactly what occurred, but you have to act like it never happened. This is the machine's genius. He is destroying more than simply people. The societal fabric itself is being destroyed by him, making everyone a witness to the dehumanization of others and complicit. However, we are just in Act 3. And what follows is so much worse that it has been investigated as a case study in systematic psychological torture by contemporary psychologists. Because Caligula understands that there is a relationship that is even more powerful than marriage. The relationship that exists between a parent and child. This is the machine's fourth act. The bereaved dad. The next section is nearly unwatchable. I can understand if you need to take a break. Caligula starts putting individuals to death because he is bored, irritated, or simply wants to see what happens, not because they have committed crimes or committed treachery. He also creates a new protocol. The father must be present if he is putting someone's son to death. Not from a distance, but from the first row, up close. But this is what makes it more than just cruelty, it's systematic torture. The actual horror is shown in a particular instance that the historian Suetonius documents. Her father witnesses the execution of his son. This individual is then brought to the imperial palace for dinner right away by Caligula. The body is still warm from the night. The father is seated at Caligula's table, and Caligula simply observes him, examining his face as if he were performing an experiment. He's watching to see whether the father would cry, express grief, or show any signs of anguish, because if he does, Caligula will know that he hasn't totally destroyed him, that humanity still has something to destroy. Thus, as his son's body cools in an alley and the man who ordered its execution is amusing himself by examining his facial expressions, the father sits there eating food he cannot taste and conversing with someone he cannot hear. He's stealing your right to grieve, not just your child. He is making the strongest human connection, that between a parent and child, a cause of fear rather than consolation, because love can now be used as a weapon against you. You are more susceptible to his harm the more you care. He's making love risky, and this is what no one anticipated. There was a deadly defect in the equipment. Because Caligula made one key error while he was busy murdering senators and noblemen, people who knew politics, were taught to bear humiliation, and could justify their pain as the price of life. He targeted the wrong kind of person, a soldier, with his casual, everyday violence. The wrong man, the machine's last act. He was Cassius Carrier, a prominent officer of the emperor's personal bodyguards, the Taurian Guard. The elite are these people. The males who are in close proximity to Caligula every day. Trained, armed, and deadly. Caligula was always amused by one physical feature of Carrier. A voice with a high pitch. As expected, Caligula was unable to let it go. There were new jokes and mockeries every day, and this particular detail demonstrates how casual his brutality had grown. Caligula would give Kyrie passwords like Venus or Pepys when it was his turn to request the daily password, which was a military procedure carried out in front of all the other guards. Intentionally use sexual or effeminate language that would make the other soldiers grin every single day, every single week. It was insignificant humor that Caligula hardly remembered. Every joke was a drop of poison to Cheria. You see, Caligula had erred in his computation. Because they desired to survive, senators might be humiliated. They had offspring, properties, and legacies that needed to be preserved. They were able to justify their survival. However, Carrier was a soldier, a violent guy with a sword on his hip, and he stood behind the emperor every day. He had just learned from Caligula that it was not worth living under this emperor. Caligula had forgotten the most fundamental rule of predators because he had grown so sure of his system and that terror would always prevail. Something that could kill you should never be cornered. It took less than 60 seconds for what transpired next. However, it would alter the direction of the history of Rome. And the fallout reveals something much more unsettling, more than Caligula's actions during his alive. January 24th, 41. Caligula is going to the theater that he's feeling upbeat. He has been planning performances and games. There will be a play in a few hours. He makes the decision to depart at noon via a small subterranean route that links the palace and the theater. It has rough stone walls on both sides and is cramped and poorly lit. The conspirators are holding out. As Caligula gets closer, Chia moves forward. This is typical. The emperor is always consulted by the guards. When he asks for the password for the day, Caligula, utterly oblivious and confident in his invincibility, responds with a final mocking sneer that is the last thing he ever says. Carrier thrusts his blade beneath Caligula's ribcage while yelling, "Take this." Caligula falls and tries to flee, but he is unable to do so. The hallway is too small. On both ends, there are conspirators. They swarm him. According to the sources, there were 30 stab wounds. The blade is inserted 30 times. They continue until everything that might possibly be living is gone. 4 years of pent-up anger, shame, and fear, released in a furious, violent 60 seconds. The monster has passed away. At that point, things start to grow worse. Caligula is not the last of the conspiracy. They locate Caesonia, his wife. She is aware of the events. The wailing is audible to her. She is imploring, begging, and attempting to reason with armed men who have recently murdered an emperor. They kill her by stabbing her. Next, they locate the nursery. Julia Drusilla, Caligula's daughter, is 2 or possibly 3 years old. The sources don't agree. She is picked up by a soldier, who swings her head first into a marble wall while she is sobbing for her mother. They must ensure that there is no heir. Nobody who could mature and pursue retribution. Thus, a toddler is killed. When the machine malfunctions, this is what occurs. It doesn't simply end. It consumes anything that is related to it. Rome appears to be changing for a few hours, perhaps an entire afternoon. The Senate convenes. They begin to argue. Some wish to return to the old methods, reinstate the Republic, and completely abolish emperors. There is a genuine debate over what Rome ought to be for the first time in many generations. The Taurian Guard then decides what to do. The Guard is robbing the palace while the Senate is in session. They are searching rooms and stealing valuables like jewelry and currencies. Behind a curtain, one of them hears something. When he pulls it back, he discovers a middle-aged, nervous man with a limp and stammer lurking there. Caligula's uncle Claudius, the shame of the family. Everyone believed he was innocuous and most likely had brain damage from a childhood disease. The guard doesn't see a harmless idiot when he looks at him. A new emperor is seen to him. Claudius is carried to their camp by the Taurians on their shoulders. They declare him to be the emperor. Additionally, the army has already made a decision about the Republic's future, while the Senate is currently discussing it. The system made it through. This is the part of the story that bothers me. Caligula's reign lasted fewer than 4 years. 4 years. That is insignificant in the context of Roman history. A footnote, a blip. Nevertheless, We are still discussing him 2,000 years later. Why? Because Caligula demonstrated a scary aspect of power. He demonstrated how a state's entire apparatus, its laws, military, economics, and bureaucracy, can be used as tools for psychological warfare. He was not employed outside of the system. He turned the system into a weapon. The imperial brothel's ledgers are an example of bureaucracy at work. Drusilla's forced mourning is an example of police enforcement carrying out their duties. He raped senators' spouses during the banquets. That is the function of imperial hospitality. Since he was the law, whatever atrocity he carried out was legally permissible. Furthermore, the system did not perish along with him. It recently acquired a new operator. The true horror is that it wasn't that one man was a monster, but rather that the device he created continued to function without him. Take a look at what followed. Nero blamed Christians while setting Rome on fire. Domitian put individuals to death for having a negative opinion of him. Senators were made to see Commodus engage in gladiatorial combat in the arena. Elagabalus are acting in a way that is so unsettling that I am at a loss for words on this platform. The blueprint was still there. Because Caligula exposed a truth about power that Rome could never unlearn, the machine continued to change. There is no way to stop someone who controls the military, the law, the economy, and the culture. Nothing but waiting for them to pass away or be killed. No balances or checks. Even in those cases, the system just locates a new user. Caligula was the worst of masters and the best of servants, according to Cineas. By posing as the ideal subject, he acquired the skill of tyranny. He was a student of Tiberius. Observed the workings of a monster. Learnt every method and psychological instrument. He then made it flawless. That is the true lesson, the caution. The biggest dangers don't come to light. They pick up knowledge. They adjust. Until they are no longer in need of it, they wear the mask of allegiance. One more thing. The majority of Caligula's records were burned by Claudius after he ascended to the throne. The paperwork, letters, and ledgers all caught fire. The men who wrote our official history, such as Suonius and Tacitus, did so decades later using surviving fragments, rumors, and memories. This implies that the 5 acts, the systematic dread, and the machine, all of which I just described, were what made it through the purge. Just think about what we lost. Imagine what was so unsettling that they determined it had to be deleted from history, even in an empire that fed people to lions and executed countless. For 3 years, 9 months, and 8 days, Caligula was in power. He created a device at that time that demonstrated to all future despots how to systematically and mentally destroy people. Additionally, the blueprint never vanished. It's still out there. This raises one last query for us.